In the haze of a Tunisian morning, February 20th, 1943, German Panzer crews saw something impossible. The official reports would fail to convey the sheer disbelief among Wehrmacht tank commanders near Kasserine Pass. They watched as American M4 Shermans performed maneuvers that violated every rule of German armored doctrine, all without any visible signals. Across the chaotic North African landscape, obscured by dust and smoke, 5 separate Sherman tanks navigated treacherous terrain. They had no direct line of sight to one another, yet they closed on German lines with a coordination that felt almost psychic. There were no signal flags, no colored flares, and no motorcycle couriers darting between the vehicles. Still, they operated like a single, thinking entity. Each tank instinctively covered the blind spots of its comrades. Every crew seemed to know precisely where the others were. Inside their Panzer IVs, German commanders grappled with their FUG-5 radios, straining to decipher orders from their own company leaders through a wall of static. Their amplitude modulation systems were overwhelmed. The Germans' 10-watt transmitters, once considered cutting-edge in the 1930s, struggled to push a signal more than a few hundred meters while on the move. Worse, most of their tanks were equipped only with receivers, leaving them unable to report enemy movements or cry out for assistance. What was happening? The Americans were leveraging a technology that the Germans barely knew was feasible. Every single one of their tanks housed a frequency modulation radio. These systems featured crystal-controlled precision, 25 watts of raw transmission power, and a clarity that sliced through the roar of engines and battlefield din like a surgeon's scalpel. Thousands of miles from the factories of Detroit, the most critical technological edge of the Second World War was making its debut. It wasn't found in thicker armor plates or a larger gun caliber, but in the unseen electromagnetic signals that linked every American tank crew in a way the Wehrmacht could not comprehend. This revolutionary shift began on July 22, 1941, when the U.S. Army officially standardized the Signal Corps' radio sets SCR-508, SCR-528, and SCR-538 for all its medium tanks. While German armies were rolling deep into the Soviet Union with tactics reliant on radio links between command vehicles, American engineers at Galvin Manufacturing, the company that would become Motorola, were mastering FM technology that would make German systems archaic. The project was led by visionaries like Daniel E. Noble, who imagined FM radios in military vehicles, and Henryk Magnuski, the lead radio frequency engineer who overcame the immense challenges of installing delicate electronics inside the brutal environment of a tank. Their resulting creation weighed a hefty 181 pounds and turned every Sherman into a mobile node in the world's first true battlefield network. The BC-604 transmitter pushed out 25 watts of power, more than double the German FUG-5's output. It operated on the 20.0 to 27.9 MHz band and offered 10 preset channels with rock-solid crystal-controlled stability. The SCR-508's dual BC-603 receivers gave commanders the ability to monitor 2 frequencies at once, a feature that would prove utterly decisive in the chaos of battle. But the true game-changer was frequency modulation itself. Edwin Armstrong's FM technology, licensed by the military, virtually eliminated the static and signal interference that plagued AM systems. While German radios interpreted every spark plug fire as noise, American FM radios delivered crisp, clear voice communication, even under a full artillery barrage. On November 8, 1942, Operation Torch landed American armor in North Africa, tanks landing on a beach. The tanks of the 2nd Armored Division came ashore near Safi and Fadala, equipped with SCR-508 radios that would soon prove their absolute dominance over German communications. How could the German system be so inferior? The vaunted Afrika Korps, the Wehrmacht's most seasoned armored force, was crippled by severe communication constraints. A typical German Panzer platoon of 5 tanks had only 1 or 2 vehicles with complete Fu-G5 transceivers, meaning they could both send and receive messages. The other tanks had Fu-G2 receivers only. They could listen to orders, but never reply or report a threat. The German platoon was a rigid hierarchy. The leader issued commands, and the subordinate tanks simply had to acknowledge with their actions. When a command tank was knocked out, easily identified by its multiple antennas, the entire platoon's coordination collapsed. This weakness was a fatal flaw against American units, where literally any tank could take charge. The Battle of Kasserine Pass. From February 14th to the 24th, 1943, became the first major showcase of this American radio advantage. While a tactical victory for the Germans, the battle exposed capabilities that left Wehrmacht observers baffled. Amidst the swirling confusion of the fight, scattered units of the U.S. 1st Armored Division maintained perfect coordination across a 50-mile front. Tank crews who had never even met before worked together to launch attacks, warn of ambushes, and summon artillery fire with crystal-clear FM transmissions. German signals intelligence intercepted these American communications, noting their exceptional clarity and the seamless cooperation they enabled. The 10th Panzer Division's intelligence report stated that American units kept contact at ranges where German radios were just useless static. Even more alarming was their slow realization that every single American tank was a command vehicle capable of full transmission. The German Fu-G5 radios, using AM technology in the 27.0 to 33.3 MHz range, suffered from crippling limitations. Their 10-watt transmitter could barely manage 2 to 3 kilometers under ideal conditions, a range that shrank to just hundreds of meters once the vehicle started moving. Every spark from the engine, every whir of an electrical motor, every clank of the tracks created interference that AM systems simply could not filter out. In September 1943, American armor arrived in Italy, where the rugged mountains should have neutralized any radio advantage. Instead, FM technology became even more critical in terrain that made German AM radios practically worthless. The SCR-508's frequency modulation was far better at handling the signal-distorting multipath interference found in mountain valleys. American tanks coordinated their attacks through landscapes where visual signals were impossible, and German radios were completely silent. During the push towards Cassino, American armored units displayed a level of teamwork that seemed to defy German military science. Tank platoons separated by entire ridgelines could orchestrate attacks with a precision that German doctrine insisted required direct visual contact. The 1st Armored Division's after-action reports casually mentioned routine coordination at distances that rendered German equipment useless. Then came June 6, 1944. As Shermans churned onto the beaches of Normandy, their SCR-508 radios kept them in constant contact with naval gunfire support ships, a level of joint arms coordination unthinkable with German tech. But the hedgerow country of the Bocage quickly exposed a new, critical vulnerability. Tank radios could not talk to infantry radios. The foot soldiers' SCR-300 operated on a 40.0 to 48.0 MHz frequency, completely incompatible with the tank's 20.0 to 27.9 MHz band. This communication void was lethal in the dense Bocage, where German infantry armed with Panzerfausts could stalk American tanks, while nearby GIs were powerless to warn them. So what did they do? American ingenuity solved this problem in a matter of weeks. Tank crews simply mounted EE-8 field telephones inside ammunition boxes welded to the outside of their tanks, wiring them directly into the internal intercom. By Operation Cobra in late July, this crude but effective modification had revolutionized tank infantry teamwork. A simple phone on a tank changed everything. Operation Cobra from July 25th to 30th, 1944, showed the world the full devastating potential of American radio supremacy. The 2nd Armored Division, under Major General Edward H. Brooks, directed over 200 Sherman tanks using radio networks that gave them unprecedented command over the battlefield. The German defenders of the Panzer Lehr Division faced an enemy that appeared to have a sixth sense. American tanks reacted instantly to threats reported by other units miles away. Artillery strikes, called in by tank commanders, arrived on target within minutes. The contrast with German units was absolute. Panzer Lehr, once Germany's most elite armored division, was now mired in communication poverty. Most of its tanks had no working radios at all, forcing them to rely on visual signals in terrain where you could barely see 100 meters. The few radios that did work were plagued by interference and short range, making any real coordination impossible. The irony here was staggering. Germany was the nation that had pioneered the use of radio in armored warfare. Heinz Guderian, the father of the Blitzkrieg, had championed putting radios in tanks back in the 1920s. His 1937 book, Achtung, Panzer, stressed that communication was the lifeblood of armored operations. Guderian had personally developed the radio systems that allowed panzer officers to coordinate their lightning-fast attacks. He knew that rapid armored advances demanded flawless communication. Yet, by 1943, German industry couldn't even produce enough radios to meet the demands of Guderian's own doctrine. German production numbers tell the story of a crisis. In 1943, Germany built around 5,700 medium tanks, but manufactured fewer than 2,000 FUG transceivers. Many of those radios were prioritized for command vehicles or assault guns, leaving standard tank platoons with virtually nothing. Soviet tank forces were in an even worse state. The T-34, despite being the most produced tank of the war, usually rolled into battle with no radio at all. Soviet doctrine depended on flag signals and rigid pre-battle plans, with catastrophic consequences against the Germans in 1941. By 1943, Lend-Lease aid brought some relief. American radios, including SCR 508 sets, were installed in Soviet command tanks. But even at the war's end, only about a quarter of all Soviet tanks had a radio. This comparison highlights the sheer scale of the American achievement. While the Soviets struggled to equip 25% of their tanks with any radio, the United States achieved a 100% deployment of an advanced FM system. Motorola's Chicago plant was a symbol of American industrial mobilization. Before the war, the company made car radios. Switching to military production meant completely retooling and solving massive technical hurdles. Each SCR 508 set contained 2,748 separate components, all built to strict military specifications. The BC 604 transmitter alone had 474 capacitors and 385 resistors. Crystal oscillators had to hold their frequency perfectly despite extreme temperatures and the violent vibrations of combat. The production figures chronicle America's industrial power. In 1942, 3,800 SCR 508 family radios. In 1943, 11,400 units. In 1944, 24,000 units. Total wartime production surpassed 50,000 tank radio sets. This manufacturing miracle ensured that all 49,324 Sherman tanks built during the war were fitted with this sophisticated equipment, a feat no other nation came close to matching. The SCR 508's superiority went beyond just FM. Crystal-controlled frequency stability meant tank crews could preset channels before a battle and trust them to stay locked, regardless of combat conditions. German FUG-5 radios used variable capacitor tuning, which constantly drifted off frequency. The dual receiver setup let American commanders listen to both their local platoon net and the company command net simultaneously. Orders cascaded down the chain of command instantly, while leaders maintained total situational awareness. And inside the tank? The BC-606 intercom system was fully integrated, letting any crew member alert the commander to a threat. Throat microphones and noise-canceling headphones allowed for clear communication even in the heat of battle. Many German tanks had no intercom at all, forcing crews to communicate by shouting or physically touching each other. Power management was another American edge. The SCR-508 ran on either 12 or 24 volts, adapting automatically. A dynamotor power supply provided clean, filtered electricity that eliminated interference. German radios, wired directly to the vehicle's electrical system, picked up every engine spark as jarring static. These tactical advantages completely reshaped American armored doctrine. The combat command structure, flexible, mission-specific task forces, was entirely dependent on reliable communications. American commanders could build ad hoc battle groups from various units, knowing they could all coordinate seamlessly through their compatible radios. This level of flexibility mystified German commanders, who were used to the rigid formations necessitated by their own poor communications. During the Battle of Aricourt in September 1944, the 4th Armored Division went up against multiple German Panzer brigades equipped with superior Panther tanks. On paper, the Germans held every advantage in armor and firepower. But American radio coordination proved to be the ultimate trump card. Every single Sherman could report enemy positions in real time. Tank destroyers got targeting data from tanks they couldn't even see. Artillery observers in Sherman command tanks called in devastating barrages that arrived within minutes. Over 3 weeks, the 4th Armored eliminated 281 German armored vehicles, while losing only 41 of their own. A staggering 7-to-1 kill ratio that defied the technical specs. Throughout the war, German intelligence never fully grasped the significance of America's communication superiority. Their combat reports mentioned excellent American coordination, but chalked it up to better training, not better technology. A captured intelligence assessment from September 1944 read, "American tank units demonstrate good radio discipline and coordination." This appears to result from extensive training and rigid communication procedures. The report completely missed the technological chasm. German tactics never evolved to counter this American strength. They kept targeting what they thought were command tanks based on antenna setups, never realizing every Sherman could direct the fight. They set up ambushes, expecting American units to lose cohesion when separated, failing to understand that radio contact maintained unity regardless of visual contact. By March 1945, as American forces closed on the Rhine, their communication advantage was at its absolute peak. The capture of the bridge at Remagen showcased the incredible speed of American command and control. When the 9th Armored Division found the Ludendorff Bridge intact, radio reports hit 1st Army headquarters in minutes. Within an hour, divisions across the front were already shifting to exploit the breakthrough. German forces, relying on telephone lines that Allied aircraft had systematically destroyed, couldn't react with anything close to that speed. American radio coordination created an impenetrable shield around the bridgehead. Tank platoons from different battalions integrated flawlessly, coordinating their fire over shared radio nets. German counterattacks, poorly organized due to communication breakdowns, arrived piecemeal and were annihilated. In April 1945, the encirclement of the Ruhr pocket was the final masterpiece of American communication warfare. Armored columns from the 1st and 9th Armies executed a complex double envelopment, orchestrated entirely through radio. Inside the pocket, 325,000 German soldiers were trapped, largely because their communication networks had utterly collapsed. American fighter bombers, guided by radio-equipped forward air controllers, had methodically wiped out German communication hubs. Wehrmacht units lost all contact with higher command and with each other. Field Marshal Walter Model's last transmissions before the silence revealed their desperate situation. No contact with adjacent units. No communication with higher headquarters. Fighting continues, but coordination impossible. This American superiority also had a profound psychological effect. American crews fought knowing they were part of a team, never truly alone. Even when isolated, they were always connected. German tank crews felt the opposite, a deep, profound isolation. Unable to communicate, they were forced to fight individual duels within a larger, uncoordinated battle. Otto Carius, one of Germany's most decorated tank aces, wrote in his memoirs, "Tigers in the Mud," about the constant struggle with limited communications, though even he focused more on tactics than the underlying technology gap. The strategic impact went beyond single battles. The incredible tempo of American advances in 1944 and 1945 was fueled by a radio coordination that German forces simply could not match. The Third Army's famous race across France was possible only because of radio networks that maintained command and control across hundreds of miles. German commanders consistently underestimated American capabilities because they could not imagine the level of communication superiority their enemy possessed. Heinz Guderian, then Inspector General of Armored Troops, saw the problem but was powerless to fix it. In a December 1944 memo, he admitted that American coordination was nullifying German advantages in tank quality. After Germany's surrender, Allied technical intelligence teams examined captured German equipment. Their findings confirmed what battlefield experience had already proven. German tanks often had better armor and guns, but their communications were catastrophically inferior. A U.S. Army technical report concluded German tank communication gear was about 5 years behind American systems. The lack of FM, limited distribution of radios, and poor electrical suppression were all critical flaws. Soviet evaluators came to the same conclusion. Given access to captured German tech, the Red Army chose to copy American radio designs for its post-war tanks. The statistics lay bare the massive gap. America produced over 50,000 advanced radio sets for its 49,324 Sherman tanks, a 100% deployment rate of 25-watt, crystal-controlled FM systems with a moving range of 7 miles. Germany produced roughly 6,000 full transceivers for over 12,000 medium and heavy tanks, a deployment rate of around 20% for 10-watt, variable-tuned AM systems with a moving range of less than a mile. This difference was decisive. The radio dominance of the Sherman tank established principles that still govern armored warfare. Today's main battle tanks are packed with communication suites that are direct descendants of the SCR-508. They are digital, not analog, but based on the same fundamental ideas of universal deployment and reliable coordination. The German Bundeswehr, rebuilt in the 1950s, made communications a top priority, explicitly learning from WW. A training manual stated, "The defeat of superior German tanks by inferior American vehicles with superior radios teaches that information dominance outweighs platform superiority." Modern conflicts have proven this lesson repeatedly. In the 1991 Gulf War, coalition forces used superior communications to dismantle Iraqi forces whose Soviet-designed tanks were individually powerful but poorly connected. The story of the Sherman's radio is the story of a victory won in the electromagnetic spectrum. a victory that was more decisive than any advantage in steel or firepower. German tank crews fought their war largely unaware of this revolution. They discovered far too late that every Sherman was not just a vehicle, but a node in history's first mobile battlefield network. The SCR-508 radio transformed the M4 Sherman from a merely adequate tank into a component of a vast weapon system that included every other American tank on the field. This was a transformation more profound than any upgrade to its armor or gun could ever have been. If you enjoyed this deep dive into military history, please hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed to WWW2 Archives for more stories like this. Every Sherman carried the seeds of victory, not just in its 75 mm cannon, but in the 181 pounds of radio equipment that connected its crew to all others. This connection forged a collective intelligence that no single German tank, no matter how superior, could ever hope to match. This reality was learned through bitter experience on the battlefields of Kasserine, in the mountains of Italy, through the hedgerows of France, and in the final desperate battles for Germany. The Wehrmacht never devised an effective countermeasure because they never truly understood the technological gap. A comment reportedly made by Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel at the surrender. "We knew how to build better tanks, but you knew how to make them work together," captures this fundamental truth, whether apocryphal or not. America hadn't just built 49,824 tanks. It had built 49,324 nodes in the world's first armored network. The revolution that historians now call network-centric warfare truly began in 1942, when the first Sherman with an SCR-508 radio rolled into combat. From that day forward, the nature of war was changed forever. The side with the better communications would beat the side with the better weapons. The network would always defeat the platform. And the connected would always overcome the isolated.